Man, y'all know the face, y'all know the name, y'all tuned into the world's greatest podcast. No, I don't just say it because it sounds cool. No, I don't just say it because when I put it on a shirt, we're going to sell a lot of shirts. I'm saying because I actually believe it. I think this is the world's realest and the most just powerful podcast out right now. Talk Ain't Cheap podcast, hosted by yours truly, Mr. Movie Clears for Talk. And I got a special guest with me. And y'all know I don't introduce my guest. So guest, please introduce yourself.
Hi, hello. My name is Jacqueline Sarkodie, but I go by Indigo Ari.
Sarkodie, like the Ghanaian artist.
Yeah, but I'm the original. You know, it's actually my name. It's not like an artist name adaptation, so it's a little different. No shade to Sarkodie. I definitely respect his contribution in music and everything else putting us on the map. But when you born with it, it's a little different.
So you think Sarkodie put Ghanaian music on the map?
I feel like he's definitely holding it down for Ghanaian rap. I would definitely say that. But I don't even just want to say Ghanaian rap. I would just say African rap, and him being able to flow between his language and English and being able to establish himself the way he has and position himself in music. So I definitely want to give him his respect.
I love Sarkodie's music. I like him, EL. Who else am I really a big fan of? I like him, EL. Mr. Easy, obviously.
I would just say music, honestly. One of my favorite Ghanaian artists is Kojo Nchi.
Yeah, he's dope.
Yeah, he definitely does it for me. I feel like hip life is where it's at, if I'm really going to be honest.
Hip life is fire.
Yeah.
Because the thing with hip life, hype life, all of those genres, a lot of it really is a blend of what Africans, what Ghanaians and Nigerians been doing.
Yeah, the essence of music.
So, you know, it's interesting because I ain't really think we gonna get here, but I'm happy that we touching this, because I feel like there's always a lot of back and forth between Nigerians and Ghanaians, about like whose jollof rice is better. But if we just gotta be honest, I feel like Ghanaians have positioned themselves in a way we as Nigerians have not gotten to. Obviously, Ghana's a smaller nation, so they have things a little more different to worry about. But it's still, I feel like, doesn't excuse the fact like Ghana is doing what Ghana's supposed to be doing.
I would say...
was. Because right now, your economy is really bad right now.
I would say in terms of positioning, we kind of have to pay attention to structures, what we're doing in infrastructure, where our government stands in terms of how they categorize themselves and how we implement government and how that affects the community. I feel like both nations in itself are both talented, and they have the people with the intellect, the knowledge, and the passion and dedication to further both countries as a whole. But I would just say in terms of the dynamics in which they're able to receive opportunities can be a bit challenging. And if we can create avenues in which when we migrate to other nations and do get opportunities, that it is important that we go back and, help with the infrastructure and create platforms where people are able to excel in what they want to do.
Nah, most definitely. Because what I've noticed, especially when it comes to a lot of people leaving from a certain region and then coming into a new space, they start to adopt and assimilate. And one of the things I actually do want to study is what assimilation looks like for first generation black people, because like for a lot of us that come from where we come from, assimilation is a culture shock all the way through and through, in terms of like language barriers, in terms of cultural nuances, in terms of history, right? Because just because we may all have the same tint, our history, I don't even want to say it doesn't all start at the same places, but the pivotal points in history impact us at different points differently. So there's things that some folks will really be upset about that to us is like, well, yeah, we upset about that too, but that's like the norm for us in this space. Because I always tell people the history, like when you talk about Nigeria, like a lot of people are like, oh, Africans sold people out. I'm saying like, well, if you know like the history of Nigeria, there's a reason why like Nigeria was like a powerful place and then was enslaved until 1960. Like until 1960, these people did not get their independence, and then up until 1960, Nigeria, the actual establishment or the discovery of Nigeria wasn't even as a place where people were supposed to live. It was as a trade post. It was a trade colony. So when you know that it was originally called the Nigeria Trade Colony or Post or whatever they called it, and you understand that the initial goal for Nigeria was for it to be a place where people can come trade and basically generate money for Britain. You start to really have a different conversation about all of these things. Granted, I'm not ever going to be here when it's one of them people that's like saying like, yo, the Jewish Holocaust was bad and slavery was bad, but slavery was worse than the Holocaust. I'm not that person. I myself know that shit was trash all the way through and through. But when it comes to our individuality, our cultural understanding, and our positioning, I believe history and then the reference and context to what history was at certain points are super important. Because history is always changing, and history also tends to repeat itself. But it repeats itself for people who don't know their history. If you know your history and you understand the context and the complexities of history, what tends to happen is you're able to now decipher and infiltrate and basically stop history repeats. Like we kind of call like generational curses. You know what I mean? It's that. Like we call it generational curses. We call it all these things. It's legit like, yo, get to a position where you understand your history to a point that the outside world can't dictate who you are on the inside. So when you walk into certain spaces, no matter how different the world may be for you, you always will carve a safe space for yourself because you understand the ancestors you come from. You understand the walks of life you come from. You understand the positioning that you come from. You understand like why you're fighting the fights that you're fighting is because someone else died at the hands of somebody else or had died because they wanted you to be able to have the opportunity to stand tall and represent your family and your legacy and your history at that point. So it got real deep. I didn't think we were going to go here. I thought it was going to be just vibes, funny, because off of social media, that's what you give off. But I feel like for folks who really get to know you, understand what you're about, you're an intellectual scholar first. And I'm happy and honored and blessed to have this moment to share with you. So usually I don't ask this, but I'm going to ask you this. Where do you want this conversation to go?
I would say, honestly, I feel like I respect your platform and your contribution to how you've solidified yourself in your walk of life through our encounter in Buffalo and everything else. So also part of me just coming to your platform was also a way for me to properly give you your flowers in terms of the way, not that you necessarily position yourself, but the way that you chose to not be a liability, but to be an asset in every room that you put yourself in, even if people didn't see your value. I
mean, and I appreciate that, truly. That means a lot to me. What I would say is what I learned at a young age is that all people don't know good things. So, for example, one of the issues that we're having in my home with my mom, my sister, and my peoples is that we are in a place where we have outgrown our space. Like, I lived in different places, and my sister have lived in different places, my mom, and we all have things from places that meant something to us in the moments that we occupied that space. So now it's kind of like when it comes to the whole concept of positioning yourself, it's more so like what matters to me and the things that are important to me may not be important to the next person. So for me, I've always been raised and taught to always pursue things that actually add value. My mom was a serial entrepreneur. She's very intelligent, and she was one of those people that people gave up on early. And she was the one that had to be she was the one that changed the trajectory of our family. So when it comes down to certain things like that, when you know where you come from, there's certain things that you just cannot do. And my mom always told me there's things that your friends could do and it might not impact them, but let you do it. And that's basically all it is for me. I just never wanted to be an embarrassment. I think that at the baseline level, I just never want to embarrass nobody. I never want somebody to feel like I really embarrassed them. Because I always say to people, like, I don't ever want to be the person that disrupts you from getting to your destiny or adds some kind of like pain, suffering, hurt, whatever that impacts you on your journey to wherever you have to get to. And because I did that, and that just puts you in a bad position, because karma is real and God don't make mistakes. So if I do that to you, you don't think that's going to come back to impact me in one way or another? If not through my kids, through my wife, through my family, through my business. They say it all the time. The things that you try to hide, you always show up in your business, in the way you do business. So for me, that's always what I've been about. It hasn't ever been about ego, pride, being that nigga. I don't really didn't give a fuck. I just was like, if you're going to say you are something, make sure you're better than me. That's number one. And then make sure you're outworking me. Because 9 to 10 times, it's not that people are more talented than you or even outworking you. It's just they are in the right positions with the right people.
At the right time. And the thing is that sometimes when you look at someone and you see that they have something, there's so many ways that someone can obtain something. It may not necessarily be moral or ethical. However, they've been able to obtain it. So when you see it, that doesn't mean that you can't have it also. It's about the way you determine getting that thing and what you're willing to do to get it. Some people are divine, some people are chosen, some people are willing to work hard, and some people will just do whatever it takes by any means necessary. You just have to decide if you're willing to go through that route that person took to get it.
And I think when it comes to people who are willing to do anything that's necessary to do so, especially in a system like capitalism, what people don't understand is that the minute you set a price on yourself, you automatically devalue.
You make yourself a commodity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you should never reduce yourself to a commodity, because you should have pride in your originality and that there's no one in the world who can be like you. Even if they try and imitate you, they can never be you.
And I'll just say at the end of the day, the minute that you put a price on yourself, you have to be able to either live up to that and define that and be able to accept that. Like for me, I've come to terms a long time ago that it's very, very difficult for someone like me to be in positions where a lot of people who are not like me are, because what I've realized is, one, I'm going to show up authentically. Two, I'm not one of these people that's going to stroke an ego for the sake of getting what I want. I don't have to do that. I'm qualified. So if the qualification is not enough, then what is it? So then just call it what it is. Say that it's not about who's smarter. It's not about who works harder. It's not about who's strong up. It's not about none of that. It's all about who you like. And if you like somebody, then say that's what it is. Because everyone ain't meant to be everywhere. Like I tell people all the time, as a party promoter, someone who does events and studies events, like communication is my shit. Like I'm not one of them folks that not many people that could really out communicate me respectfully. And it's not, and I'm talking about like I've done politics, I've done journalism, I've podcasting.
Like you have so many arenas in communication that's diversified that people can't really challenge you on that level.
And I'm not one of them people that's like, and I got my shout out to my mentor, Dr. Owens. He's just like, sometimes you just do what you have to do. Like for me, it ain't about the accolades, the attention, being, the access is a blessing.
But the authenticity is what's more important.
At the end of the day, good, bad, happy, sad, I gotta get home to my mama.
Exactly.
You feel me? Like at the end of the day, as dope as I may be, or my work or whatever, the quality, whatever, I gotta go home to my mom. I still gotta answer to God, and I still gotta make sure as a black man I make it to home. I gotta get to the crib. So
yeah,
when your priorities when your why is a little different, because funny enough, like this is just a quick sidebar, but like when I spoke with my mentor today, one of the things we spoke about was the concept of motivations, like what motivates people to do things. And at the time, and he's a real research scholar, like he helped establish the Texas Southern Communication School. He was a founder faculty there. He was the department chairhead of Louisiana Tech's communication department. Like he started the Alpha chapter in that region, and like he's like 80. Like this is an old guy. He's seen it, done it. Like it's just not somebody. There's not many people, and then my other mentors are kind of like this too. But there's not many people who have dedicated 40, 50 years to academia. Point blank period, white, black, Chinese, whatever. There's not many people who have put in that much time in academia to be able to have the conversations, and still, like, it's kind of like Jay-Z rapping at 80 and he's still rapping better than someone who's 20 about current things that are happening and still relatable at 80. That's what these people who are my mentors have done. And one of the things we spoke about, because we spoke about a study, and the study said that black people and white people, when it came to what their motivations were, it was the same. And he was like, how? And I had to ask that question too, because then when you start talking about context and nuance, positioning, right? Mm-hmm. Platforms, media, what is dominant thought versus what is counter dominant thought? What is someone's reality? And is there a difference between the lived reality or the reality of someone who is studying and positioning themselves a certain type of way? When we got down to it, it's basically that. Different people have different motivations. And especially when it comes to now, like the way my mind works, I bring everything into full circle. When it comes to dating, when it comes to family, when it comes to education, it's so relative these days, because it all depends on your vantage point of where you started getting to that point where you have, I ain't gonna say so much even awakened, but when you got to that point where you start to see how important you were versus what society is telling you. Because what I've learned in life is like the society will tell you that you ain't shit.
Your social perception versus your own personal perception, and how much of what you think is your actual original idea versus what was an influence idea or something that was presented to you for you to consider or to be influenced into believing.
I'll even take a step further. what social media says is lit versus what happens when you turn off the computer and have to live your real life.
Yeah.
The conversations get very, very deep.
And not everybody can handle it, because what we've seen historically is nobody really likes the truth.
Oh, at all. The truth ain't sexy. And I always tell people all the time, like, how do you, like, especially when it comes to, like, dealing with women, I'm like, how do you like your truth? And I always say, because it could be like, and I always like think of it like iced tea or Tang, right?
Yeah.
So there's some people who like their iced tea with a lot of sugar in it, and there's some people who just like their iced tea with like a little scoop. So how you like your truth? You want me to give you that truth, or do you want me to water it down for you and make sure that it is digestible for you in minimal ways?
Like, do you need it in doses, or
do you want the whole thing?
Do you want to fully detox and receive it in full, or do you need to slowly wean yourself off of that spectrum of thinking?
And the problem is, what people don't understand is that time costs. It costs. It costs the bullshit.
Yeah,
there's a cost to bullshit. If I'm bullshitting you and I'm wasting your time, that's a moment in my life I cannot get back.
And time's invaluable. It's the one thing that you can't technically afford to waste. No one can, and you don't know how much of it you actually have left.
One thing you cannot control.
Yeah.
So you could control how you spend your time, but you yourself cannot control the creation of time.
Yeah. You can't slow it down, speed it up. You just have to work within the parameters you have while you know you consciously have it.
So where I'm at in life is now understanding that God positioned me in a certain place with certain people, and understanding that the reason why I never fit in, because I never really was bullied. There was like one person that bullied me. I punched him in his head. He threw an apple at me, and after that, we got cool. But I've never really been bullied. But I've realized in life, people have tried to bully me in other ways. Yeah. Like, I've never been like someone that they're going to try to pull up on and say, you a bitch-ass nigga, and I'm not going to do nothing about it. No. That's not happening. A lot of men don't have that kind of goal. But what I've realized is people will try to tell you in innate ways that you don't belong places.
Indirectly.
Yeah. Or people will try to put you in a situation where the things that you're dealing with become something that's crazy. Or people will try to
invite you into situations of chaos, and through body language assert themselves in ways that they would never do verbally directly.
Oh, of course, but that's what platforms are made for. Platforms are made to
don't come through me through the corners. Come to me direct.
Yeah, that's a real one. That's a fact. We got to put that on a shirt. I haven't said that in a while.
And you know, it's another thing too. When people are coming to you, you may think you know me in the physical realm. You don't know who I am in spirit. So when you're operating with certain people, you need to be careful how you're trying to tackle them, because you indirectly curse yourself through jealousy and envy, and you don't
deep.
have to.
It gets deep when you talking about spiritual stuff. It definitely gets deep, because that's in ourselves. I feel like as a people, like there is a definitely very deep spiritual connection we have, not to only our ancestors but to our history. And I think what tends to happen with a lot of people is that we have always been told, how you doing? We have always been told that history kind of looks at from one perspective. But when you take yourself away from America and you go into a whole different place, the history that you think was important doesn't mean shit.
Or even if you just think about, even if you don't want to tap into spirituality, for those who are atheists or anything else, but they believe in science, energy it can't be destroyed. It just transfers or transforms. So you also have to think about the type of life that you're living. When you die, what happens to you? What happens to your essence or the makeup of you? You know what I mean? So in your day-to-day, a lot of us are kind of just driven by proving or solidifying that anything that anyone ever said to us negatively, that we're able to prove them wrong and we can achieve that. And people try and transfer that negative energy and feel like that is going to be the fuel for their motivation to get to where they are. So they kind of skip embracing the journey and the character that the journey would have built them to when they do acquire wealth or they become rich. But at the end of the day, if you are not mentally equipped for the journey that where you're trying to reach is taking to you, you're going to realize the same things that you were trying to avoid that you didn't think were important are just going to be magnified through your finances and the people that you're connected to.
Yeah, Dr. Darius Daniels said it best. He said, like, you only will grow to the size that your shoulders can hold. So if you're someone who has these big dreams but your shoulders can't hold that, I'm sorry, but that might not be the right positioning, the right time, or you yourself cannot do it right now. It's just not. It's not. You can't handle the burden of which you're trying to carry. And I always tell people all the time, I will not carry a cross I did not bear. I refuse. So insecurities, people's uncomforts, things that hold them back, limit them. That's not my reality. I refuse to take it because I didn't carry that cross and I didn't bear it, and I refuse to do either. So I'm not,
Exactly. And part of success is being uncomfortable. And there's a difference between being a leader and follower. The thing is that when you're a leader, you're going to see a vision that nobody else can see but you. And it's not until you get there and you become the first that there will be many to follow after. You're going to open and create doors that have never been opened or created before, even though there's nothing new under the sun. So you also have to understand that if you are a visionary, if you are a leader, if you are independent, that you have to understand about 95% of the people that you are around are not only not going to believe in what you're doing, they don't even know if that you'll get there. So you have to be your driving and motivating force.
No, that's real. And I'll even, like I said, we'll just build on that. Like I'll just say, like, what I've also learned in life is just because you're a visionary doesn't make you a good business person.
Exactly.
Because those are two different things.
Arenas.
Because being a visionary is being able to see and forecast things that people cannot see. And sometimes what visionaries will tend to happen is that they are so caught up in the vision that, like, and someone like Kanye, for example, so caught up in the vision that you may not read the fine print.
And the technicalities that come with that vision. The art part is easy. The technicalities of what comes with what you're doing. The
politics. It's the politics. It's the know-how in the politics and understanding the system in which you're operating.
And when you go into somebody else's system, like even when I think about business and everything, you have to look at the origin and history of everything. And if you want to enter into that, like even think about business. Why do we not know about a lot of black patenting companies? Not even just black, but other ethnic patenting companies who are dominating these arenas in which we legitimize our offices, our paperwork, our financing, our everything. What are the proper foundations of life? What do we essentially need? Who has access and who controls that in majority, and where do they get those things from? And what is the business relationship between that? And how do we create that for ourselves and other people?
Well, I'll tell you what I told one of my uncles at our cookout barbecue Henny Palooza for my auntie birthday. I was like, no one told you had to stay here and be treated a certain type of way.
Exactly.
It's like after a while, I always tell people all the time, just because you might have to sit in some shit to grow, don't mean you gotta like the smell, and don't mean you have to adopt the smell as your cologne.
Yeah.
Like, you can make money here and live in peace elsewhere.
Yeah.
Why is that such a taboo thought to people? And it's kind of like, and I had to tell them, like, respectfully, the conversation you want to have, we cannot have it at the level you want to have it at, because you don't know enough about what you need to know to be able to position yourself to act, to make the statements you need to make effectively. And this ain't the first time I had to tell people that. Like, the more and more I talk to folks, it's like, damn, it ain't to slight you, but like, respectfully, like, you
just
are
to
not,
keep it real. You
just not there. So at the end of the day, if you were talking to someone who's not me, who doesn't have compassion and love for you, you would be embarrassed.
Exactly. And I feel like people think that because you're not showing them empathy in the way that they know empathy, they kind of look at it as tough love or this or that. And it's just like, no, these are the facts of what it's like to navigate in other people's arena. And the thing is that when you're walking into something else that somebody else established, you can't come in with a totalitarian mindset thinking that you're going to become a dictator or you're going to intercede in something that somebody's already built and make it yourself. Make it yours. You know what I mean? It's okay to take the time and patience to solidify your own foundation and build upon that. But some people don't want to put in that legwork. And the thing is that everybody got to put their hours in.
Yeah, you can't cheat the work. That's really, like, when people...
And the thing is that it's better to do something the right way and get it done the first time than for you to try and cut corners. Us as people, we always think that, oh, everybody says you have to do it this way. I'm going to find a smarter way, a more technical way to cut around that. Let's be real. There's so many intellectual people that we've had in society or throughout the world for decades. If there was an easier, more intellectual way, it would have already been done. There's a reason why certain things are structured a certain way. It doesn't mean that there aren't other ways of doing something, but there's a reason why the foundation of certain things are the way that they are.
No, without a doubt. And I'll even just take a quick step forward. I would say that the problem is what I've learned, especially in innovation. Innovation is determined not only by what you're saying, who you are, and and the things that you're doing that may be something completely different. It can also be where the fuck you're positioned at. Who the hell do you know? And what kind of information do you have access to? Because technology plays a huge role in that. If you can't get access to your online databases and all your assignments are based off your online databases, are you a stupid nigga or did you just not get access?
Yeah, and another thing too, if you look at the direction of education and how all of our information is becoming more digital, we're not also using the full capacity of our brains and turning our brains into our personal memory card. Like you lose your phone, well, you got everything in your iCloud. So if you didn't memorize certain numbers, certain information, it's gone for you. You get what I mean? And the things that not relying on certain things and being truly self-sufficient in any capacity so that in any disadvantage, you can rely on your mind. For the most part, in a lot of departments. If you even think about it, the concept of a memory card, it's called a memory card, but what do we first learn about memory and what part of your brain stores memory? How much can you actually memorize in your brain? If you apply a gym rat mentality to your brain, I'm pretty sure it would take a lot of people far. But just because you're intellectual doesn't mean you know how to execute what you know intellectually, because that's another factor. So you just have to assess your life, where you stand, where you're trying to go, and really create your master plan.
Shit, we can go even deeper than that. We could talk about trauma, right? And we could talk about what is trauma and what does trauma do to you when it impacts you. Because what people tell you, what people don't tell you about trauma is that trauma does two things. One, trauma impacts you. Well, what trauma is the response to when a traumatic experience happens, or when an experience happens, when something happens that impacts you in a deeper way, in a negative way, right? And then what tends to happen with trauma is that it usually stops you from growing until you resolve that trauma. So what tends to happen is you stop growing until you handle, like, legit. And this, and like I said, I read a lot. So for me, my issue is now, like, I have to really be able to sort and cite everything. But like, even I think they said mentally, like, there's a proof that your brain kind of stops growing depending on on the type of trauma you have. Like your brain legit cannot grow past what had happened. Cause kind of like, imagine like you get into a car accident and you smash your whole front, your tire come off. You still trying to drive the joint, but it's like your car ain't fixed. And even if you try to kind of get some help and you stop, your car ain't driving the way it used to drive.
And it's still like, people don't understand, like, from some of the things I've seen online, trauma can also just sit in your DNA, your makeup. You know what I mean? I feel like some people don't even believe in talking about their problems, resolving or dealing with them. They don't know how to just let it out. Even if you don't have a person that you can trust, just writing it out, really sitting there with your thoughts, doing constant self-analysis at any point that you possibly can to try and deal with it, being honest about how it honestly made you feel in that moment. Was it so traumatic that every time you think about it, you can revisit that same moment and get that same feeling? Or does it even intensify through just memory of thinking about it? We don't go that deep.
Nah, without a doubt. And you know what? I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I know I got to teach soon in 8 minutes. So, but I'm glad we're having this conversation, because at the end of the day, where I really want us to really eventually go with this is how do we get to a position where the trauma that has impacted us doesn't impact us anymore? Because I'm not saying getting numb to shit, because I feel like what society is trying to teach people to do is to become medicated so that you are now numb to the pain and the history and the trauma that your people and the spaces that you occupy, what they may resemble or what it may remind you of. And where I'm at with is, like, I don't want to forget the pain, but I also don't want to be in a position where the pain is hurting me. Where
you can't function at your full capacity.
Yeah, like, we know the pain happened. We're not afraid to know that the pain happened, and we're not afraid to understand that the pain was a part of a certain situation, et cetera, but we can grow past the pain, but we don't forget that the pain existed. And that pain, it's not like we're operating in spite, but we understand what history has shown us, and we're not stupid. That's what I want. Like,
yeah,
we ain't
how do we transform that pain? Because even if we apply this, I would say, to a simpler thing, like maybe exercise. A lot of people want to get fit and everything else, but, like, you gotta
work out.
When you work out and you're trying to build muscle, what do you got to do? You got to tear the muscle. You got to feel the burn. It burns a little bit, but it's rewarding. And I feel like pain is a part of the journey. There's a balance in everything. Because without knowing one, you don't understand the full capacity of other and why you need both. Life is full of highs and lows, but every time you go low, that's a chance for you to get higher than you were when you fell at the bottom. A seed got to die before it can sprout and grow. So you got to be willing to die sometimes to come back stronger, come back better, come back more efficient, more prepared.
I'll give you a little pushback. I don't think we gotta die, but I definitely think sometimes sometimes you might have to just take a step back. Yeah. Like, folks make it seem like because you fall back, you means you fell off, and that's never the case.
Nah.
Like, for me, I played a lot of sports in my life. My parents have really, I've been blessed to be in spaces where I can do a lot of different things well. And one of the things that they've instilled in me is understanding your role and your position in the spaces that you play, but also understanding that as long as you stay in the game, you have a chance. Because what people don't understand, especially about like sports psychology, about performance, about the grind, the grit, etc., entrepreneurship, is that it's not like a upward like hill. Like it's like a stock trend. During certain seasons it's up, then certain times it's down, but you never go too low. And then you go back up when it's time. And it's kind of like you got to understand, like, when things are good, you give God glory. When things are bad, you give God glory. When things are good, you pray more. When things are bad, you still give God glory because you're here to see the good and the bad. It's a different type of mentality. So all in all, what I'm saying is simply the fact that the positioning matters, right? And understanding that there's a time and place where things ain't always going to be in your favor, but you should be able to position yourself that when a recession hits or COVID-19 hits, that you can bet on certain things that always keep you grounded in a certain situation, that you will be able to know that you can operate from that baseline or that threshold. It's kind of like, while you still have waves, you're alive, but the minute that shit is a flat line, you're dead. So it's like never staying idle. If you gotta go backwards to go 10 steps forward. But if you gotta go forward, then go forward. Because there's gonna be times you have to take a step back to go 100 steps forward. Because there's a such thing as misstepping, and there's also a such thing as misdirection, and there's a such thing as misinformation. It's like if you're trying to go back to the Bronx, or if I'm trying to go to Staten Island, and where we at right now, and they say go make the right, but we really supposed to make the left. Sometimes you gotta walk backwards to where you started at.
Right.
Because now you should have went left. You had to go right, and now maybe you should use your Google, or maybe you should follow people who may know where they're going or looking like you or whatever. And when you understand like the real theory of how things operate, when you really understand how the world operates from a different lens, because I also noticed that, especially like when I'm like the only or the first in the space, the general consensus of what it means to be something is usually super skewed to a position of privilege, power, and or a certain nuanced experience that's like things naturally just work a certain type of way because this is how things go for us. But then when I'm like, well, for
who's
me,
us?
Well, them.
That's the honest question.
Them. So for other folks, right?
Yeah.
But then when I'm like, well, if you take that same notion and bring it to the Harlem I know, or you take that same notion and bring it to the harbor I know, that's the difference between you living and dying. So at the end of the day, it's like I've also had to learn that there's a level of politics in the gameplay that I have to learn and understand. But at the same time, that don't mean I have to play it and indulge in it, and I have to be okay with it. I have to understand that it exists and that it's a part of the reality of what it takes to be successful, and that if you want to be successful under those means, then you have to do those things. But the beauty of the life that we live, we have one life to live. And at the end of the day, what we do isn't always measuring to somebody else's standard of success. The same way that they can say that that's successful, and the people that agree with them say that's successful, there's the same way we can do the same.
Exactly.
Because at the end of the day, good, bad, happy, sad, money, houses, all that stuff, it'll position the next generation of people to live and feel a certain type of way. They might not have to deal with roaches. They might not have to deal with certain type of violence, crimes, policing.
But they'll also understand there's certain rooms that they'll never be able to walk in, no matter how much money they have. And I feel like that's another thing. We sometimes as people, we try to force ourselves into rooms that we were never welcomed, or rooms we were never intended to be in.
And it don't benefit nobody.
Yeah.
It really don't benefit you being there. And that's what I had to learn. A lot of spaces, they make it seem like it's supposed to benefit you in being there. It really don't benefit you being there, because at the end of the day, you never going to be respected, loved, appreciated, or really given what you want. Because the minute they find out what you want, They make you strip, prostitute, OnlyFans, push up, stretch, play it, run a fucking play.
Just so that you can be the face, the little spokesperson.
To feel a smidget of what you thought it would have felt like when you would have been able to get it just by being you.
Just so you could get a little congratulations or the little self-validation that you thought you needed.
Or the one up against those who look like you but never been in the same position as you had. So with that being said, we're going to take a quick break. I got to use the bathroom and I got to teach my class. You're tuning in to Talk Ain't Cheap podcast. And y'all know the slogan, it's not that deep, it's a vibe.